All righty, we are live. Well, thank you, Tyce, for this opportunity to on this webinar on K-12 professional development, the past, present, and future. So, thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself, and then I'll let you introduce yourself. So, Jay Fulgencio, founder and president of Learngenix, learning and development solutions company. So, and one of our partners is MobileMind. And so, Tyce, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Happy to be here. I really appreciate it. Grateful for your time and effort on this. Yes, my name is Tyce Miller. I'm the founder and CEO of MobileMind. And for a little bit of description on MobileMind, we are a modern professional learning solution that is dedicated towards all efforts around professional development, but really improving instruction for teachers at when it comes to technology tools, new curriculum, and really making a simpler PD life cycle for the district and a more modern approach for teachers. I'm sure we'll get into some of that, so I won't spill the beans on everything now, but that's who I am, and that's what we do.
Thank you, Tyce. So yeah, let's get into it. So this session is right where we're talking about we're specifically focused on K-12, right? The past, present, and future. So we'll start off by we're talking about some of the past about in K-12 professional development. So, well, how do you define professional development in K-12 education?
So, first of all, it's a really timely question because I talked to a lot of different districts, and I do think there is a little bit of confusion on definition when it comes to just the overarching term of training or PD for adults. So, the way that we define professional development, it is professional development or professional learning is really the ongoing training and continuing education for teachers and staff, and this is the key part, that supports the improvement of instruction in areas like, as I said before, like technology or curriculum. And the key is in order to increase positive student outcomes. Okay. So I say that compared to professional learning, professional development, the key things there, if the takeaway is that you're improving your instruction capabilities with or by and through technology, curriculum, whatever, as it pertains to improving student outcomes. That's not the same as mandatory training or security training. So, for example, it's extremely important to make sure your teachers know how to not get caught in internet phishing scams. So that would be on the cyber training side, right? Or it's also extremely important to know that your teachers understand how to handle bloodborne pathogens, which is one we hear all the time. So that's kind of this compliance stuff. So all these things are important, but most of those categories don't really focus on the pedagogical relationship of instruction. So that's how we define it, and that's primarily where we really focus on creating our solutions to improve the instruction to better student outcomes.
Okay, and why should educators even care about PD? I know that for educators, there's a requirement that sometimes you need certain amount of PD, but why should they even care beyond just it's a requirement for me to do so?
Well, first of all, I think when we go back to what I just said, I think people are going to care about different things. So when again, if we're talking about professional development, and just assuming that it's true what I just said, that definition of what PD means regarding instruction and student outcomes, ultimately it's going to make your life easier, and it's going to make the children's life better. So particularly in today's world, especially with technology, and I mean the pace of change and the complexity and everything is super fast. If you don't know how to use effective modern day technology to improve your instruction, it's just going to make it it's just harder for you, right? You're less efficient. You're frustrated. The number one reason that, so if I hire 100 folks as a district this year, 20 of those people, so 20% are going to leave in the first year. That costs about $25,000 to onboard a new teacher. So 20 of those are going, and the number one reason is not pay, because they know what they're getting paid, is lack of training and support. And that's because it's frustration. I don't understand things. Nobody's telling me what to do. How do I use this, et cetera, et cetera. So when it's done right, it's going to make your life better. It's going to be more fulfilling to you as a lifelong learner and an educator, and it's going to make a better impact for your students and improves the whole ecosystem of learning.
Okay. So let's go back to a time when you first started, right? What was your experience with professional development when you first started? Like, when you first started PD, how was that experience, and how has that changed or evolved over the years?
Well, often it's a great question too. Often people will assume, not that you're assuming, but my background, like, oh, well, he taught in school. Yeah, I did not teach in school. I'm not an educator. I am a software, primarily a software guy with a long history of understanding, selling, and technology as it pertains to things like business intelligence, analytics, and mobile technology. So my first experience was, and really it was driven by me as a parent and someone who's working in the space. So the backstory, just briefly, which will give you some context. I led the one of the divisions I led at a company called AirWatch, was our education division, and this is significant, and it really shaped my vision or understanding of PD. This was around 2010, 2011, when the iPad was very pervasive. So what was happening then is that those years, once the iPhone came out and then the iPad came out, it really was, you hear the term paradigm shift a lot and just sort of thrown around, but that was a paradigm shift where mobile was being coming into schools, particularly iPads. And then on top of that are all those supporting apps and cloud technologies. Okay. So what that company that I work for did is we did what's called mobile device management. We monitored, managed, and secured the devices in the schools. So over the course of about 3 years, we gained about 2,000 customers, most of those school districts. And what I saw at every district, whether it was LA Unified or a smaller district or private school, everyone was having the same challenge of the teachers didn't know how to use the technology. And to me, as a layman to PD, a technology person who loves technology, if it's used right, it was bewildering to me. And just common sense was saying, okay, this is not where it's supposed to go. My first day education conference, I met a teacher, and she said, "Oh, those iPads, we've got 150 of those in the closet." That's nuts, right? So, and what I saw over the course of 3 years was that the traditional means of training teachers how to do things was falling short in the face of the mobile and cloud technology wave. The pace of change, the complexity, one size fits all approach. You got teachers who might not know what the cloud is. You got some teachers who are working on Google certification level 2, things like that. So I saw this, and my kids were 5 and 6 years old at the time. And I said, this is when I started experiencing this. And that company was acquired by a company called VMware, and I left. And I said, I want to figure this out. We had some really good customers, and I was able to leverage them over the next 2 years to figure out what is wrong with professional development and how can we fix it, and how can we create a software solution at scale that emulates human interaction and does something more than just let you go watch videos. So what I was lucky enough, and I'll close with this, is that I met some very sharp people along the way. For example, our chief learning officer has I don't know, at least a couple of PhDs, and she is her dissertation was on innovating PD with technology. She understands adult learning theory, so we've been able to marry some extremely sharp folks, both from the technology side and the education side, to address this problem. So, and that's not quite what you asked, but I wanted to give a little context because and I think sometimes, by the way, I think that's good that I don't come from the education world, right? I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. So I try and get really good people around us, and so we can team up and address it in a fresh way.
Yeah, and that's a good thing that you point out. So I know you mentioned earlier about, I mean, we see it in the news every day. Education is going to K-12 education. I mean, not to leave higher education out, but we're focused on K-12. Is going through some big trouble. Um, and in your space, in the MobileMind space, and we'll talk about it later. But what I've seen in PD is I remember when I first started with PD, the professional development K-12, right? You would be in a physical environment, right? You would listen to somebody speak, you would take it, all right, you get your hours. Now, fast forward, we're I would like to say called the post-pandemic, right? Post-pandemic era where everything is basically mobile. Now, when I'm in PD, right, you can do it virtually. And not only that, you could do it virtually. You would think everybody's focusing, but then I've seen some teachers like they're teaching and they're in the PD at the same time. It's like but they have no choice because there's not that many substitute teachers as there once were. They can't get out and do the PD anymore. They're just boggled down. So how do we get the teachers to focus in the when they're supposed to learn this content, but yet they got to teach at the same time? So it's like, how does one like MobileMind, how do you get that teacher to be able to focus on their professional development when of course you can't let the kids go, they got to learn, but at the same time the teachers got to get their PD.
Yeah, that is like the often times the elephant in the room that people actually don't talk about, right?
Yeah.
Um, so much to unpack there, but it's such a great question. Just give you an anecdote. So Dr. Vitala, Amy Vitala, who's our chief learning officer, she taught in the school district, actually where I grew up and went to school in Georgia. We were not at the same time. I'm much older than she is, but I was like, when did you get enough time to do PD? And she said, you can have time to do much of anything. So when did you get time to do anything for yourself during the school day? I would usually go hide in a closet for 15 minutes. And I'm not kidding you. Yesterday, we were on a demonstration of MobileMind, and the decision maker was taking a call from a closet. It's the first time I've seen those things. And so we looked about it. So first of all, what does that tell us? We don't have any time, right? So the question is okay, well, if you don't have time to do it today, oh, well, you can come to this Saturday session, or we're going to have a conference or in-service day. Now, where they got to go? Which school district is it going to be at? I got to drive there, and what's the follow-up training look like? What if I'm sick? Do I have to wait for the next one? So that model is antiquated. It's important to have it, but it needs to be supported in other ways, which we can get into. But another interesting thing, pre-COVID, meaning when everyone was in class, our highest access point into MobileMind across all of our districts on any given day was 1:15 p.m. So that's what you want to achieve is job embedded PD. So how do you do that? If a teacher knows that and this goes to the point of the question and how you address this, at least partially. If a teacher knows that they can take something, learn something in 5 to 15 minutes, right? That's the first thing. That it's relevant. I don't waste my time with, nonsense in the middle of my teaching day. If it's relevant and if it's something they can actually use, then they will find the time to do it. So, for example, if someone's learning, and I'll just use, we're a Google partner, we're a Microsoft partner, but I'm just going to use one of the examples of somebody learning. Let's say someone's trying to learn professional or how to use Google Docs, something really basic. If I'm a teacher and I'm just going to do a basic course, I'd really need to learn how to insert a hyperlink into Google Docs so I can help my kids, document things on this book report, whatever. I'm just making this stuff as I go. All right. So she or he needs to learn how to do that. And so if I take a micro course that teaches me in 5 to 10 minutes how to do that, and I actually, while I'm learning, I'm creating that very thing that I can use it for my class, now it's not a waste of time, right? So it's combining the actual relevancy and the practical application of that PD simultaneously with the learning of that new skill. And that is a huge part of it. So that's one thing that we have seen that is just statistically that we've seen has been really, really phenomenal in helping that, where it's not a waste of time. So, again, if it's a waste of time, nobody wants to do it. If it's not relevant, why are you doing this to me? I got enough on my plate already. You give me something I can use. It's going to better. Again, back to that definition of professional learning.
Yeah, so yeah, and I think that's very correct. One of the things is like relevant. How is this relevant to me? And I've seen that battle between, I don't want to call the old guard, right? You have the teachers who've been in the class for 20 plus years, who've used to the PD in person, right? You have to be here because you have to be here. It's always been like that, and it's always been like that. And you got like the new generation of teachers, maybe less than 10 years teaching, was like, how is this relevant to me? Right? How do you make this, so I see a battle between the old guard and the new guard when it comes to professional development. One, you have to be here. One, how is this relevant to me? right? And I see that clash going on, and it's like, how do we get both the old guard and the new guard, I want to say, to see eye to eye together and level in unison to make PD worth the time and the effort for one to attend and to really make it forward, right? And I think, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen that battle going on between those clash between
Uh,
those
for
two
sure,
groups.
for sure. And I think if we delve a little deeper into that concept, I think in any industry and in any evolution of workforce or whatever, you're always going to have generational um, friction, right? But I think just because it's pointed out, what I think is interesting is I'll talk to people about, let's just say, new technology in the classroom, right, or new curriculum styles, things like that you want to learn, and they're like, oh, well, all the new teachers, they're already so savvy. Wrong. That's not true. They're savvy because they know how to search, and they know this, and they use TikTok, and they use that. Yes. Are they more comfortable with the technology or the interface, the medium of which? Yes. And I think, back just touching on higher ed, the problem is those teachers, when they're going to those education universities or education schools and they're getting their teaching degree, those are tenured professors much of the time, teaching them the same stuff that they've taught forever. They're not teaching them how to use technology in the classroom. So first of all, they're not as, I think there's this perception that everyone's like super savvy and they're coming out and doing like augmented reality in the classroom with their kids. It's just not the case. So that's one thing. But there's of course there's friction between the understanding, the comfort with it. But I think anyone's still going to be pressured with time, um, and all the things we said before. The PD, those things that I mentioned, they are cross generational, right? If it's relevant to one person, it's relevant to the other. Now, to not to pick on the old guard for a little bit, but one of the things that I find challenging, and I would be lying, I'm pretty fairly transparent person, a little frustrating at times, is the decision making of people who have been in a district for a very, very long time, and the unwillingness to look at, based in empirical data, that we might want to change something, right? So I talked to someone the other day, and the entire district was raving and trying to get us in there for numerous things, like, oh, create new content, micro courses, activity-based learning, integrating with live training. Yes. And tracking PD, for example, is one piece of it. Okay. So let's just say that's one piece of a PD life cycle. And one of the folks who came in late said, yeah, well, we can do that in our HR solution. We can track PD. That's one of 15 things that you need to do. And guess who doesn't care about how their PD is tracked if they can't access it? And the end users or the teachers. So there is a disconnect on that. And a lot of times you get people, especially people who are very long tenured, they're like, hey, I got a few more years. What kind of impact can I make? And should I just move on? So I do think there's always going to have that generational friction. But I will say I have met a lot of folks who've been in school districts for a long time, who are very passionate and get it. And I think it comes down to, one, the individual, right, and where their passion lies and what they're committed to, and without a doubt, it's from the leadership level at the top. And it's up to the leadership to say, okay, we need to modernize ourselves, and we need to take care of the needs of the tenured and the non-tenured staff, so that we can address those generational friction issues. And if you have poor leadership, it's not going to work.
No, yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to professional development, if the leadership is not there, it's just going to be a hot mess. It's not going to be effective. I was actually just at a PD last week on a Saturday. There was like 8 or 9 of us in total in regards to educators and such. And, to me, it was worth it. I mean, we learned about AI technology and other things, and about Microsoft tools and all that good stuff. But yeah, you're right. How do I get somebody Saturday morning to come out? They had door prizes, breakfast and lunch. But, how are you going to get its value? But then again, and I think the one piece, and I will, how do you, and I want to get your take on this, because I think it has to do a lot with marketing, right? And I'll say this, right, that marketing is such an important part of professional development. And I would say this because if you want me to go to professional development, if the marketing piece is great, like you're telling me why this is important, and you put the emphasis on the marketing, I'm probably willing to go. If the marketing is not the greatest, I'm like, I don't know if I should go. Maybe it's valuable content, But the marketing piece is just, I mean, we're used to being marketed to, right? Sold to. Every YouTube, we go on YouTube, it's like you're watching a video for 1 minute into it, you get a commercial, right? Same
Yeah.
thing, Instagram and everything else that we go to, we're commercial, we're used to the marketing piece. Do you think that marketing plays a huge role in getting people, willing to go on a Saturday to a P.D., if the marketing piece is there?
Yeah, for sure. You probably said that better than I've heard it, right? Or just connecting the dots on how we are as just general consumers and things like that. You got to, I mean, it's got to be a little motivating. Let's go, let's get excited, and let's pitch it. If I'm a
Yeah.
teacher and I have so one of the big things is buy-in, right? So if there's for us, for example, and this, whether you use MobileMind or not, there's, and I'll touch on that. There's really 6 things that we focus on based on research that have to be present in order to have sustained, successful PD initiatives. One of them is buy-in, right? So how do you get the buy-in of the teachers? Why is that important? Because they're used to the experiences that you're just talking about. Not again, man. I don't want to go on a Saturday. Buy me breakfast. I'd rather make breakfast and watch Bugs Bunny if they have Bugs Bunny anymore. I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah.
you motivate those people. Why not tell them, like, we are going to do things that are more relevant, right? You are going to get this out of it. We're going to track this. This could be a reward. It has to have an element of a reward and relevancy. We talked about relevancy before, right? But the reward-based culture is important. And I'll give you an example. It is one of the coolest ones. Every state and districts, they have different dress codes. Now, this is going to sound silly, but it's just an example. And I say that because the district of ours in Virginia uses for quite a while, and they wanted to motivate their teachers, and they were creating badges. Okay, so micro-credentialing badges for taking X number of courses, whatever. Every 3 badges that they earned was a jeans day. And the way they described the success of this was just like, it's funny. And that didn't cost them any money. That just takes a little bit of, so what did they do? They marketed that. They put it out on their website, on their monthly update. They would highlight their winners, like who are the superstars. Whether you're into competition or not, human nature, everybody wants to be recognized like that. So I know that's beyond just the marketing thing, but if you take those elements and shake it up and tell them what is in it for them and how it's not going to be painful and what they're going to get after that, you've got to do it. And we've seen that too. We've seen, oh, well, we have low utilization. Well, how did you guys roll this out? Did you tell anyone? Did you get them excited? Not just with us, but anything. So yeah, I completely agree, man. I think it's huge.
Yeah. So as the last 5 minutes, I just wanted to get your intake on this one question. We talked about micro credentials and badges, and I think that's I people just get motivated. I want my badge. I want my micro credential. Like they're really motivated to get that little badge. You think that has is meaningless. It really does motivate people. We talk about how people get motivated by that. But let me ask you this question: where is professional development going to be 20 years from now? And I ask you this question, right, because we see an evolving change in professional development, right? A lot of stuff is going online, virtually. We see the rise of micro credentials, badges, the new way in education. So, and of course, AI is coming along and all this stuff. People are scared of AI and all that. But where do you see professional development going on for the next 20 years?
Well, I think that's probably anyone's guess, but there's some things that I would say, what I would point to of where it should go. And like, okay, and I know we like the AI thing, right? That we are now seeing all sorts of new stuff, and there's speculation. People think it's something not. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that would incorporate into professional learning in a lot of different ways. For example, so let's just use that as, first of all, there's so much technology coming and there's so much pace of change. It's hard to pinpoint where those things will be. I think you will see, just on the tech side, I think you could see the incorporation of some really cool stuff around augmented reality, both for teachers and students, and that engagement. And that is different than virtual reality. I think personally, I think there's a lot of really interesting use cases beyond where people just think about VR when we get into AR. So I think the first thing is professional development. It should lead us to the point where you're no longer, as a teacher, just as a sage on the stage, so to speak, where you're learning how your students are learning. Everything is personalized. Your learning paths are geared towards what you're learning, and they're already doing that a lot with students. The sad part is, to me, that people just seem to leave the teacher part behind. I mean, how many people say to me, "Oh, we're already doing all the stuff that your MobileMind's telling us to do with our students. Why aren't we doing the same thing?" Which is a little silly. So I think you see teacher being more of a sort of instead of just that person at the top of the classroom, they're more as a facilitator, right? As a facilitator of learning with the kids. And here's the thing, the pace of change and everything is so fast. Everything, and give me I heard something like that when a doctor gets out of med school now, they're already 6 months behind, or something, so even everything's changed. So what does that really mean on PD? I don't know where it's necessarily going to go, but I can tell you, if it's not always on, if it's not fully integrated seamlessly into your life so that it's not painful and, again, relevant, where you can have access to things, or you're going to get updates on a change to thing that is relevant to you, that's the only way that we will be able to maintain a sustainable, call it a sustainable evolutionary process of that teacher-student relationship, right? So I think, I don't know what it looks like, but I know at least the foundational elements that need to be there. And it starts with the things we're talking about today.
Yeah. Well, Tyce, I know we are wrapping up here in time. So on a final note here, tell us real quick about MobileMind and why educators should check out MobileMind. I'm a fan of it. That's why I wanted to partner up. So the ease of use is phenomenal, the badge, but tell us why they should check out MobileMind.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, on average, and this, we talk about legacy, or when we say the term legacy, I say old school. On average, a school district uses 5 to 7 disparate or separate solutions to manage the entire PD lifecycle. I might use my LMS to push out content to my teachers, but my LMS is really designed for students. How do I do live training? How do I get people to register that? Do I use a Google form? Do I use some other solution? How do I track PD? There's all these different things, right? And by the way, the reality is that teachers mostly don't like to use them because the user interface is clunky, old, and it's not enjoyable, and it's not built for teachers. 10 years ago, if I'd started this company, people would say, "Why are you starting a PD company? Doesn't make any sense. No one cares." And I mean that seriously. So now, post-COVID, everyone is realizing we have to have a dedicated solution for our teachers and staff. It's got to be based on adult learning theory. It's got to be easy to use. So why should you use this as a district? You're going to eliminate a lot of solutions that you don't want to use that are designed just for your teachers. And your teachers are going to love you because our software is beautiful and it's designed for ease of use, aesthetics, and for teachers to use. The feedback we get, and I know this sounds like I'm completely drinking the Kool-Aid and I'm passionate about it, but I've sold a lot of software in my life, and I love selling MobileMind to teachers because they appreciate it so much. And that's a big part of that usability.
Yeah. Well, Tyce, thank you. I know you can check out MobileMind at www.mobilemind.io. Also in the chat, I put in a demo link there, so please check that out. So thank you, Tyce, for this opportunity. I really thank you. So check out mobilemind.io. You really will like. I'm telling you, I'm not just saying it to say it, but it's a really great platform to use for professional development. So, Tyce, any final thoughts before we close this webinar?
No, I just wish everybody out there luck. Thank you for the time, and I'm always grateful to be able to talk. I appreciate you giving me this platform, and have a great rest of the week.
All right, Tyce. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right.